All right, good evening. Tonight we are going to talk about slope. One thing I want you to do, make sure that on the top of your notes you write the title slope. And also, I would also recommend that you write down the name of this link so that if you ever need to go back and see it, watch it again, you have the link so you can go back and look easily. Third thing that I recommend is you have a lot of different colors in your hands. Colors help so much when you're taking notes. Different colors make a world of difference and help actually in memory. All right, so the slope. The slope is a rate of change of a thing occurring. And we need to remember that. That's the biggest thing that we're dealing with. We're dealing with a change. Our change in our y's and our change in our x's. Okay, and there are actually going to be two ways that we're going to figure out how to find the slope of a line. The first way is we're going to use the slope triangle. And we're going to use the slope triangle when we're given a graphed line. Okay? The second way that we're going to learn how to find the slope of a line is the slope formula. And I love a slope formula because once somebody gives me two sets of coordinates, I can just plug them in, do two simple subtraction problems, and then I have my slope. It's a piece of cake. Two subtraction problems. That's it. And the slope formula is n equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. But again, remember, all this is right here is a rate of change. It's the change in my y values over the change in my x values. So again, we're going to go back to that. All right, so let's get started. And we're going to talk about the rate of change or a graphed line. So let's, on your paper, nice and neatly, draw a graph. Take it out to +3 on the x value, a -3, a +3 up top, and a -3 over there. And then we're going to plot some points. The first point that we're going to plot, -3, +3. The second point we're going to plot, 0, 1. The third point we're going to plot is going to be +3, -1. And now we're going to connect those points together to make a line. All right. Now, when we have our line and we're trying to use the slope triangle, what we're going to do is we're going to start at the point all the way on the left, and we're going to determine what our rise is going to be. So the rise is the change in the y values. When I'm here, going from this point, the one on the left, to the one in the middle, I have to go down. And when I'm going down on the y-axis, that's going to be a negative movement, and I'm going down 2 units. On my x movement, I'm going to be going to the right. And movement to the right is a positive direction. So a movement to the right is a +3. And the great thing about straight lines and slopes is that they repeat themselves over and over and over. So if it repeats itself and it is a straight line, then we know that it has to be the same thing. So I'm going to go down from this point 2 units, again, another -2, and then over 3 units, and I should run into that third point, so 3. Now, we've talked about slope being y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. We've talked about it being a rate of change, and I'm going to give you something else that you've heard many, many times before. The slope is your rise over your run. So, as I look at this graph up here, I'm going to take a different color, and I'm going to say, what was my rise? My rise was actually a -2. And that was the units coming down on the y, the change in my y. Over, going to the right in a +3 direction. So the slope of this line is a -2 over 3. And you'll see that we're going downhill in a left to right direction, and any line that goes downhill left to right has got a negative slope. So that's how you use the slope triangle. Let's now take an example of of 2 sets of coordinates, and we're going to use the slope formula. So one coordinate, -2, 1, a second coordinate is -1, 4. Okay? So when you're given two sets of coordinates and it asks you to find the slope of that line, how are we going to do it? Well, we're going to take our slope formula. You remember what the slope formula is? I'm blocking it. It is m equals, and now I don't think I'm blocking it anymore, y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And I often get the question, what do the 2's and the 1's mean? Well, what that just tells us is that we have two different points. And we're going to name one point x1, y1, and we're going to name another point x2, y2. So let's name them, because we get to choose which one we want to name. My ultimate goal is to get a positive answer as much as possible. And I'm always going to start with the y's, because the y's are in the numerator. Okay? So I'm going to look at my 4, and I'm going to look at my 1. And I'm going to say, do I want 4 minus 1? Or 1 minus 4? Which one's going to give me a positive answer? Well, obviously 4 minus 1 is going to give me a positive answer. So my y2, the first value I want, I'm going to say that this is my second point, that this is my first point. And then I can go ahead and plug them in and solve the formula. So my m equals y2 is 4 minus y1, which is 1. And I'm going to put that over my x2 and my x1. Now, if my 4 was y2, my -1 has to be y1. And -1 minus, what is my x1? My x1 is -2. So -1 minus -2, and now the formula is complete. And I have to do two subtraction problems. So, come down here. 4 minus 1 is 3. Simple. 1 minus a -2 might be a little bit tricky, but once you see two negatives next to each other, you realize that they turn to a plus. So what is -1 plus 2? It would be +1. So my slope of a line that goes through point -2, 1 and -1, 4 is +3 over 1, or another way to write that would just be 3. Now, when you're doing slope, and what I recommend, leave it in the fraction form. But you got to understand that sometimes you'll see that, and you have to understand that this and this are the exact same thing. Okay? So there is your slope information. Two ways to find slope. The first way is a slope triangle. The second way is the slope formula. You use the slope triangle when you're given a graphed line. You use the slope formula when you're given a couple of sets of coordinates. If you have any questions, watch this video again. Watch it 10 times if you have to, 15 times. I will talk pretty fast, so take it slow, pause it, watch it again. Hopefully it'll make sense. If it doesn't make sense, talk to your teacher, ask questions, and do some more practice problems, and I'm sure you'll get it. Okay? Let's go out there and be successful. Take care. Have a great night.